Welcome to the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast, where we explore therapy, Kundalini Yoga, and all things holistic wellness. I'm Hannah Zachney, LMFT, International Retreat Leader, and Curious Human. Whether you're tuning into us via social media or any of the major podcast platforms, we're so grateful to have you here. Here's to opening our hearts and exploring life together. Hi, welcome to the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast. I am so excited today. We have guest Monica Hall, and I'm going to just share with you how I know her, and then I'll tell you her professional bio. But Monica and I met through her daughter, Becca, the daughter she got to keep. And Becca is a doll. We teach yoga together. And the minute I met Monica, I was just really kind of taken away by I was really taken away by there's a groundedness. And there was just, and I can hear it in the tone of your voice that I think it's that connection to source that roots you and is what is making you so useful in the world with your story. So I am so happy to continue to share that story. She has this beautiful book that she has written. She's going to have another book coming out. This book, Practically Still a Virgin, and we'll reference it. We'll talk about that, and definitely read this one. From a professional standpoint, Monica is an entrepreneur, mentor, speaker, and retreat facilitator. Her memoir, Practically Still a Virgin, was published in the spring of 2024. Monica's journey reflects resilience and transformation, demonstrating the power of turning pain into purpose. Adopted from a Canadian foster home, she overcame the trauma of abuse, addiction, and deep personal loss, refusing to let these experiences define her. Instead, they became the driving force behind her mission to create meaningful change, build successful businesses, and mentor others. And much, much more. Yay! That sounds so good.
Yeah, I did. In fact, I kind of got choked up. I'm like, really? That's me? Oh my God.
Right?
Oops, sorry, making
and
noise.
it is you. It is you. Yeah. No, I really am happy to have you here. And I was up all night reading your book, and I feel so just like connected to you through that experience, and then was able to listen to other places that you have spoken that were really showed me just not only your story, but then how your story has shaped and molded, and as life does, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
If it can, I mean.
That's a very good point.
Yeah.
Right. And in your case, it did.
Yes, it did.
So maybe I think it would be useful, because I am very fresh on your story, but could you just share a little bit of the overview of what it was in this book and what you would like the audience to know today?
You know, that's hard. I've
It is.
tried to figure out what the book's about. I know that my editor said, I go, what's the book about? She goes, it's an adoption memoir. But that was not my intent. You know, it wasn't to write about the adoption, although that's what also ended up in there. It was more, I needed to figure things out. I didn't understand why certain things happened. I think I just went on with life so that I could get to the other side, you know, have children, do all the things that we do.
Mm-hmm.
And if I would have inspected that, my childhood, it would have stopped all that.
Mm-hmm.
Intuitively, I knew that. But now my children were moved out. My daughter wanted me to write this. She said, Mom, you've got such a fascinating story. You know, you were adopted, you're given up for adoption, and then you found your family, you had a baby, you gave her up for adoption, you found your family, you were reunited with Mary. People would find that so fantastic, fascinating, and it wasn't fascinating to me. It was just lived experience, which was normal to me.
Mm-hmm.
But in writing the memoir and going through the story from, you know, being relinquished and the things that I don't know, the mystery still,
Mm-hmm.
and then looking deeper at some of the things that happened to me in my youth, things that I felt were my fault, because that's how my brain as a child processed that. And that, you know, trigger warning, by the way, for those triggers. I was assaulted at 15. And when I was 60, writing that chapter, in fact, it took over a year to write that chapter, because my child brain was still processing it as it's my fault. And I had to have my mom tell me, because I finally sat down. It was a secret for decades. I finally told her, Mom, this happened, and she said, let's get this straight. This is not your fault. Like when I was in trouble, she'd talk to me. And I had to go over it and over it and over it. So basically the book is about my journey and some of the trauma. It's, I was a hot mess in a lot of the book. I'm still sort of a hot mess. That's what,
we all
part
are
of my joy, right?
Yeah.
And it's relatable.
Yeah.
And because I've been sober for 40 years, almost 41 years, I've learned that and prior to reading this, that my pain and my mistakes and my struggles are my biggest gift.
Absolutely.
And so I don't have any shame around the things. And I'm very obviously open-hearted, open-minded, open with my story. I don't hold back. I mean, there's some secrets that I'll probably never tell anybody. There's
fair.
A couple people know.
Yes.
I think Becca knows pretty much everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's and it reads like a novel. It reads sort of like a mystery novel, and it's a binger. You can I stopped every chapter like networks, where you want to go back, and it's up like 1 a.m, you'll just keep watching it. So, but the girl on the cover, she is me at 17. I went to Bella Vista High School after we left Alaska, and I was, had relinquished my daughter for adoption, and I was broken, and I was confused, and then the stamp that I have, that when I sign my books, and the one on my Stanley Cup.
Yes, and I got my book signed today, and we have the stamp of healing. So here she is, healed with her full face, and then here is the broken. Yeah.
I'm probably not completely healed yet, but and that's fine.
I appreciate you saying that.
And I don't know that will ever happen, and I don't know that I need it to happen. I think that these things that happened to me were for me, which it doesn't resonate with everyone, but through the other side, for me, absolutely, I know that to be absolutely true. And so the girl on the cover now is whole in the sense that, and it was a funny thing, because when right at the end of writing it and having it published, I cut a few people out of my life, people that I thought I would always have in my life, because they weren't good to that girl. And there was a shift where I wanted to take care of her. It's like the child within, having that. I have pictures of myself all over the house as a little girl, trying to remember to take care of that girl. But there was something that shifted where, no. And I have a mentor. She said, Monica, you've been like the abused wife. You've had a bloody lip and a black eye, and then they said, I'm so sorry, and then he brings you flowers, and you take them back. And I've been doing that for decades with certain people that I was searching for in my memoir, and I have no regrets now letting them go.
I think that's the tone in your voice that I hear. I think it's the deeper assuredness of really a transformation, but I think you allowed that. And I think there's something so beautiful about, I call it advanced gratitude, right? Where you can be grateful for the things that other people would maybe pity even, or say like, oh, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And to be able to say, no, I am grateful for these things because of who they have made me be. And to even come into a place of, maybe it was, in some way, I never wish negative on anybody, but in some way it can be used for something that I needed to do in this lifetime. And I think you embody that very, very well.
I do. I feel, I feel it in every cell. Absolutely. And the other thing is that I've changed my narrative, or when I talk to people, if somebody's having something bad happen, instead, I'm sorry that happened to you. Because from an outside perspective, maybe that's one of the best things.
Right.
That must be hard.
Yeah.
That must be hard.
Right.
Acknowledging that it's hard.
Absolutely.
Rather than pity or, and when I've been interviewed before and people, I'm so sorry that happened to you. don't do that. It almost gives me
Mm-hmm.
more shame in a sense, you
Right.
know, because
Right.
that means I'm broken, or that I'm different, that
Or even you have to caretake their emotional reaction to your
yeah.
situation.
Yeah,
You know,
like
there's all kinds of layers to that.
that. There's
Yeah.
many, and that's another
Yeah.
one, you know. So I I mean, I'm definitely, my biggest character defect has always been self-centeredness. Ask my daughter. Um, and and I don't want to be that, you know. I want to think of others first. And
Mm-hmm.
I think, you know, I've been working on that for, you know, decades, but something shifted since the book has been published. And I kept going on the book because, in fact, there was a period of time in 2016 when I started writing, and I was writing about the rape.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a 15-year-old virgin, Catholic family, and also juvenile delinquent. Uh, I was so bad. Anyway, I didn't put everything in there. Obviously, you can't have everything in a book, but yeah, I was really bad. I was taking drugs. I was breaking into houses. I was sneaking out my window. I was fighting. You know, all those things that traumatized children
Mm-hmm.
might do. You know,
Mm-hmm.
I pushed it outward rather than inward,
Mm-hmm.
and I I just think that that was how I dealt with things, you know,
Mm-hmm.
the sneaking out my window and being able to have some freedom, which my adoptive parents didn't allow. They were very protective. My mother
Mm-hmm.
was, and because of how she'd grown up. And I don't remember where I was going with that whole thing, but I'll come back to it. Um, but I did sneak out my window and got abused and
Mm-hmm.
abducted, or and well, that was another time that's not in this book. But I was raped, and I hadn't ever processed that to understand that it wasn't my fault, and that um, I hadn't had the background or the history or the healthy grooming
Mm-hmm.
of family to understand that I had a choice,
Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
Well, and
So,
not only that, your brain at that age is not able to see your experience from an external standpoint. At that age, you really are coming from a self-centered standpoint, in the sense that's the wrong word, but a self-focused standpoint. And you're seeing that world as like, and you want the attachments around you to be so secure. So nothing's going to be, you're not going to blame anything outside of you, because that needs to be safe for your survival. So you blame yourself. It's what children do. So it makes so much sense. And it made so much sense to me that it took you, I mean, that's deep wiring at a very young age, right? That you had. So I see why you had to tell me over and over and over again that it's not my fault. So I can literally create new neuroplasticity
yes.
about this truth that is a truth,
Mm-hmm.
to do away with the lie that I have told myself since I was a child.
Yeah, that was the hardest part,
Yeah.
is going through that. And so what I was leading up to, what I forgot when I was
Yeah.
talking, because I
Yeah.
so many different
It's all good.
threads,
Circle
is
back.
that, yeah. So when I started writing that at 2016, and I was going through that really painful process, and I had never gotten angry,
Mm.
and I
Mm-hmm.
couldn't I couldn't see it. I couldn't see it from where others saw it. And so I called my mom. My mom died in 2019, but she was still alive at the time. This is my adoptive mom, but
Uh-huh.
I called
Yeah.
mom, and you know, we had obviously a difficult
Uh-huh.
relationship that you read about, very very difficult, but you know, I loved her so much.
Yes. And she was your mom.
She was
Mm-hmm.
my mom.
Mm-hmm.
So and so I remember calling her and go, Mama, Mama, I can't do this. I got to stop. I can't do this. I put on, like, I don't know, 20 or 30 pounds by that time,
Mm-hmm.
or maybe less, but now I put on more. I just, you know, I don't drink. I don't use. I, you know, didn't have a relationship, all the things. There was no, and I was writing to heal and to pull it up. And then when the pain came, I pushed it down
Yeah.
with food, which is, no,
Yeah.
that's not what I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
But I mean, I felt, you know, I've been sober, you know, almost 40 years by that time. And I was having drinking dreams that I hadn't had in decades. I mean, it was really, really a dark period. And I said, I don't think I can do this. And I was going to stop. That was my plan. The next day, I received, and I post on my blog stories. I don't know if you've read any of these essays. Some of them are really powerful, and they are not necessarily about this. But I had written some very authentic essays of my past, and there was a man that I had gone to high school with in Alaska, which is where all this happened, and I knew him. I don't remember ever having deep conversations with him. He was a really nice guy, right? And he wrote me this whole letter about this sorrow in his life, this horrific thing, and it was 40 years of what had happened. And he'd never told anyone.
Wow.
And I get emotional because I realized that it wasn't just for me. The writing was for others.
Yeah. And it gives you permission to write and to...
Yeah, well, it wasn't that I needed permission. I have never felt I need permission for anything. That's just my personality, right?
Yeah.
Just go, okay?
Right.
But for me, for him, when I saw that he had gotten something out of my writing, something such a deep level that he was able to share a shame and some sorrow, that I saw that it wasn't just for me.
Yeah, I get that.
And I've had so many of those. Strangers, men, women, all of them. And somebody, a number of people that have been teachers said this should be on all high schools and junior highs.
Yeah.
And then one of my friend's daughters, who's 15, she's read it a few times.
Yeah.
And so we all have things that we feel shame for.
Absolutely.
Everybody has loss. Everybody has grief of some sort. And they don't have to define us.
No, and I love the thread of writing though that you're speaking to, because even in the story, you reference your mom's journals, you reference your own writing, you reference the letters that you ended up going back and forth with the family that you adopted out to. I mean, like there's a lot of writing, not to mention just that you're writing a book and now that you are a writer. So I just writing a book feels like the natural progression. Like that was a way that you were able to heal for sure. And then I also would just say, circling back to the food, that's such a healthy progress. And I think it's just really important to acknowledge that wasn't, it's easy to say, oh, now I'm overeating to stuff my emotions, but it's also like, well, you're not doing what you were doing. And so it's a step, and it's baby steps, right? And then you identify that, and then you work on that, and then you do this, and that's what we do. We just choose a different route again and again and again until we find the one that, or we don't, right? Right. But that's a progress place. That wasn't a place to, and I don't think you were shaming yourself, because I think you've moved through that. But I'm just also, for whoever is hearing that, I think it's very tempting to say, well, I'm not doing that anymore, but now I'm doing this. And really it's like, well, that could be a huge progress actually,
Right.
Yeah.
And who's to say that's not what we're supposed to be doing?
Right.
I mean, that's the other thing.
Totally.
It's like all this judgment of what's right and what's wrong and what's good and what's bad and what I should be doing and shouldn't be doing just gets in the way as well of growth.
Yeah. When you write, I have a question. This is a very sincere question. So I think that there is a fine line between sharing a story that's really hard, and I would imagine for you to not, like, it pulls you down, but then it lifts you up and it creates the healing. So it's like, it's a very fine line between not indulging it. I don't know the right word to use there, but like, how do you keep yourself, I guess, is it that place where I've received these letters from other people, or I've read other people's stories and I know the usefulness, so I'm just going to rely on that. And like, how do you manage your own emotional experience with that, and not staying in victim, but staying in, like, because I know you're not a victim mentality at all. So not dropping into there, but moving forward with it.
Well, I had a community.
Yeah.
And I think community's huge.
Yeah.
I'm an adoptee. So I had that community. I'm a birth mother. I had that community. I've been in recovery. I have that community. And I have women that I mentor. And for me, and I think for everybody, really, the biggest gift is giving. and being helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Because your podcast, open-hearted, your practice,
Yeah.
and that's what this for me is all about, is being open-hearted. So what cracked my heart opened my heart so the light could come in, and I allowed that to happen. And you read my memoir, you read a couple of situations where I had experiences that were unexplainable,
Mm-hmm.
but that were the light came in.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like the purpose for me being here is to help others
Yeah.
and see what I can bring rather than what I can take.
Yeah.
And when that shift is made,
It changes everything.
it changes everything. And it also changes what we attract in life too.
Yes.
Because if I'm looking, I need this, I don't have this, I want this, rather than just surrendering to it and letting it come and knowing that no matter what, I'm going to be okay. It's like
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned before we started, The Untethered Soul by
Yeah.
Michael A. Singer. And I've read that, of course, years ago. But I've been practicing, which I alluded to in that podcast that you listened
Mm-hmm.
to, but I didn't really talk about what it was. And it's basically, if there's a worry or a fear, I lean away from it.
Yeah.
So it's like whatever I put my focus on grows.
Well, this is the art of manifesting that people don't understand. You're
Mhm.
manifesting your future every single minute, and that's what
Right.
you spoke to in that podcast. was
Right.
Like, yes.
But it's not from a place of wanting.
No.
And manifesting comes as a result of surrender.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, for instance, I had a really traumatic, painful betrayal, somebody I deeply trusted. And I was at the verge of losing everything again, and I've lost things more than once. And I remember that I wanted more than anything to not be in the fear.
Mm-hmm.
And I'd wake up in the morning and right away I'm in fear, and my mind starts spiraling, and that ball of fear starts rolling downhill faster and faster and faster, and gaining more momentum and more debris and more debris, and then I can't stop it. And so what I've learned to do is I've learned to lean away, watch it go, and then replace the thought with something else, something of love.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's easy. I replace it with my grandson's face. Oh my
Aw.
gosh, Miles' face opens my heart no matter
So
what.
sweet. Yes.
But there's other things that I've done in the past. I've said, my heart shall not fear. And like Michael A. Singer said, I watched him in a podcast or an interview with Oprah,
Mm-hmm.
and he leans away too.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an energetic leaning
Mm-hmm.
and a physical leaning, and then replacing the thought and doing that over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty soon, whatever it is you feared, it's died of neglect.
Yes. But there's also something very beautiful in what you just said. There is the commitment to doing it over and over and over and over again, and not being in resistance of that, or not being put out by
That's
that.
the
Just
hardest thing
knowing
we'll ever do.
we'll do. We
The
doesn't
hardest
stop.
thing we ever do
Yes.
is up here,
Yes.
because we get
Mental
addicted.
fitness.
Right. We get addicted to our thoughts. We get
Mhm.
addicted to our fear. We get
Mhm.
addicted to our pain. We get addicted to feeling bad.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And so
Yes.
when I made a mental, there's a author, he has a 7-day mental diet. And that is, as soon as you notice a negative feeling or thought, to do that practice. And then when you don't do it, you have to start over again for 7 days.
Mm-hmm.
And when you do that, and I did that.
Yeah.
When you do that, it was like my life just completely changed.
Yeah.
I didn't think of anything mean. I didn't look at people judgmentally. I wasn't angry or jealous or envious. I mean, it was just changed everything. But doing that is the hardest work I've ever done, really.
So how did you keep committed with that when it was hard?
Because I went on the 7-day mental diet. I mean, it
you
was a
just had to
commitment.
have-
It's sort of like, I'm
Mhm.
going to do a fast for 7 days. It was a
Yeah.
fast of thinking negatively, but I had been working on it for years. So it wasn't like I was starting out,
Mhm.
that way. I don't watch the news.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'm informed. I have, I see what's going on in the world, but
Yes.
I stopped watching the news I don't even know,
Mm-hmm.
10, 15 years ago, I used to get up in the morning, turn on my TV. I have a dressing room, and I'd sit and put my makeup on, and I'd be pissed right away. Right away, I'm angry.
Yeah.
And I don't want that. I want my heart to be open.
But yes, agreed. But it is also for many an advanced ability to understand the correlation between I'm watching this and now I feel this. So like if we baby step it, I mean, you've done your work for many years. So that for you is probably more natural to have that almost internal reflection while you're experiencing things. Like, oh, I noticed I don't feel great. What did I just do? I maybe shouldn't do that again. I was watching the news, like.
No, I mean, I'm watching the news and I'm mad right now. Like right now. There's not like later something happened. I mean, that's a whole different thing. Absolutely. I was sitting in therapy and talking with my therapist, and then everything's wonderful. It was just a little thing I'd remembered, and it was gone. I come home and I'm just pissed at my daughter. No reason. It was that.
Yes.
This is instant.
Yeah.
I'm watching the news and I am instantly pissed. And then with social media and with all the stuff that we've had going on over the number of years since we've had our phones
it's not feel good stuff.
It's right.
Yeah.
And so I've had to manage that for myself, because the most important thing in the world is this.
It's so true.
There's nothing bigger than this. Heart. That's where the healing comes for everyone.
1,000,000%. So Michael Singer was actually the inspiration for me to call what I'm doing Heart Wide Open. And it comes from that because he says that it's easier to open your heart than it is to keep it open, right? It's easier to just, I'm going to be open-hearted. But when you want to be right, when there's competition, when you're envious, when it's your turn, it's like when you're scared, pissed, it's like, you want to close. So this takes courage, right? To do that. So I ask everybody that does come on the podcast, what does the perfect you just opened it. So what does that mean for you to live with your heart
gratitude
wide open? Gratitude.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because if I'm in gratitude, I'm in love.
Yeah.
If I'm in gratitude, I believe that that's humility. When and anybody that knows me knows I'm an egotist. I'm a type A. But I mean, when I'm really in gratitude, there isn't anything else but love and gratitude. And I mean, gratitude it came from me from a lot of pain and a lot of struggle and a lot of betrayal and a lot of loss. A lot. Things that you're not privy to.
Right.
And everybody has that. For me, I think that was my destiny, is to have those things happen so that I think that's why I wanted to come here. And I have a philosophy.
Come here being the planet.
Yeah.
On this lifetime.
Yeah. I have a philosophy that my journey is to know God, whatever that is. Oneness, source, consciousness, the higher self, the intuition, the between thought, what's between thought. Because my mind can't fix my broken mind.
Can you say more about that, in between the thought? Because there's something really beautiful about that.
Absolutely. So when I'm thinking, I'm addicted to thought. I'm addicted to my thoughts. And I think all the time. We all do. It's when I'm not thinking that inspiration and intuition comes in. And I've done that through a meditation practice. And when I'm in and I'm not thinking, when I'm actually in, all of a sudden I'll get an inspiration, or I'll get something. It's incredible. That's how some of the writing happened, actually. So.
Yeah. The downloads happen in the silence, right?
Exactly.
Wayne Dyer says it's in the gap. It's in the space in between the thoughts.
Who said that?
Wayne Dyer.
Oh, yeah.
It's in the gap. Space in between the thoughts.
That's right.
Yeah. It's where the magic lives.
See, I didn't come up with that myself.
No, but those that do investigate come up with the same conclusion.
Right.
Right.
It all leads to the same place.
All leads to the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay. So something that with the healing and the spirit and the higher self, there was a place in your book where you reference, and I think you spoke more of this on your podcast, but it's when you were doing a speaking engagement with both of your daughters there. And there was this, yeah.
Oh, wow.
And there is a moment where you shared, after, not in the book, but you shared in that experience that your younger self was there, your higher self, and then yourself, right? Like,
right.
So there's so much, like, so many people do so many, we do generational brain spotting and generational EMDR work in what we do. And I was just astounded that you just found that moment, just in your own experience and being able to do all of that. Could you?
I mean, I think it came from a place of profound gratitude. So I had this awful story that I was giving people. I mean, it's not all awful, but it's, and the daughter that I had relinquished for adoption was there. It was another state. And then the daughter that I got to keep, the one Becca, was there. There was maybe 200 or more people filling the seats in this audience. And as I was talking and I was telling this story, it was like I had the sense that there were three present, that it was the me that was talking. And I'm just, I'm not thinking about what I'm saying. It's just coming out wholeheartedly. And then it was the higher, my other self that was watching this and going, whoa, this is incredible. And then there was the young 15-year-old that was bawling and saying, if I could only seen this moment.
Yeah.
If I could only see this, it would have given me such peace.
Yeah.
And it was all three together converging in this journey that had such a beautiful, full circle,
Yeah.
And yeah, I've had a few of those times, that one was, and they're all a little different, but that one was so incredible that I was blown away.
Yeah.
I was really blown away. And I wasn't even aware of the audience. I wasn't watching my daughters holding hands and looking at each other with tear-filled glances and in tears. I didn't see any of that.
Yeah.
And at the end, because my daughter had introduced me, she said that, this is Monica. I owe her, my life for a number of reasons. So here's Monica. I'll let you tell her story. And this is the daughter I relinquished. And nobody knew who she was except a handful of people. And then at the end, it wasn't a planned talk. It just came from the heart, right? At the end, I said, and the daughter that I gave up for adoption all those years ago is the woman who introduced me. And there was an audible, I have the recording, you can hear it on the recording, but in person, it was an audible gasp.
Yeah, I imagine.
And I didn't plan it that way,
Yeah.
It was just that it was a divine plan. It wasn't me.
And you were asked to end on a specific time, and it was on the nose.
I hadn't looked at the clock one time. So our higher self, all of us, have that higher self. If we get out of the head, get out of our brain, and let it happen, it's perfect.
So this little girl, that tender part of you, that if I would have known it was going to turn out this way, if I would have known I would make it through, right? Whatever, if I would have known, I wish I would have known, right? I wish I would have known. In my observation of you, this is how I assume, so correct me if I'm wrong. I would think that part of you has only strengthened over the years, in the sense of, now I do know that it will work out. Now I do know that it will be okay. And so I think that piece is what's allowed you to continue to release the fear and the worry and the attachment to the outcome along the way, right?
Absolutely, because it's been a series of losses that have gotten me there.
Thank you for those, right?
Yes, thank you. And that is true. Yes. Absolutely. So that little girl wasn't supposed to see that.
Right. she needed to be
that
scared and overcome that. Yeah.
And what that little girl wanted is, I wanted my baby to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And I at that point at 15, I didn't realize that I was in a horrible adoptive home. I didn't realize that other kids didn't have these experiences. I didn't realize that I had no identity, partly because I was relinquished. I had no mirror to look at. Nobody had my mannerisms. Nobody had my facial expressions. Nobody had my spirit, my I'm type A. All the things that I had, and I was like a stranger in my own home. None of us were adopted. We were all.
Mm-hmm.
My brother and I weren't related. My mother, we weren't related to my parents. So, it was just.
Because your brother was adopted too.
Yes, 4 strangers masquerading as a family to me. But I didn't know that at the time. I didn't know any of these things, and I wasn't supposed to. We're not supposed to know these things that we wished would have been different. I don't wish anything would have been different. I feel sad that some of the things that I had done that hurt others occurred. I feel my daughter has had identity issues as well. We were reunited when she turned 18. I posted the reunion at the airport, on Instagram, and I forgot to mention that I'd written a book, and it had over 7 million views.
Yeah.
But what people were saying was, well, there's a lot of judgment, well, you should have kept your legs together. She hadn't had to give up your baby and blah, blah, blah. And then there was other people that were, sticking up. And I just got to see how confused the narrative is around adoption in the world, that adoptees are expected to feel grateful for, having someone take care of them because they weren't wanted. And most of the cases are not like that. We were relinquishing because we were told that we weren't good enough to be mothers, that somebody else with more money was better to raise my child. And what happened. And parts of me regret that. And then I can see the pain that it's caused her. And other parts, I saw the beautiful family she got. So, it's just it's a flow of a journey, a flow,
it is.
And
it was so tender the way that you referenced her, though, and the way that you prayed for her. And Mary Monica, I hope may your parents love you. May you have the best. May you be cared for. Or I mean, your intentions for her. If we believe that those are sent out and felt, right?
Well, it's so interesting you bring that up because, I was raised Catholic, and we were very, very Catholic. Went to all the holy masses. I was named after the Virgin Mary. My name is Mary Monica. I was named after my aunt, who is a nun who I've never met. And of course, the Virgin, right? Practically still a virgin.
Yes.
It was a virgin rape.
Very, very catchy title. It made sense as I read.
Yeah, and it was a line in my book. It was something I was thinking when I was going to the nurse's office to get the pregnancy test. I can't be pregnant. I'm practically still a virgin. I mean, I just couldn't.
Yeah.
I pushed down the things that happened so that I could move on.
Yep.
And I don't know, where was I going after that? What was I going to talk about?
Oh goodness, we're gonna have to edit this. Where were you going?
Any ideas?
It was the tenderness of speaking for her and wishing her well, prayer, Catholic.
Oh, okay. So one of the things with Catholicism is the rosary, and my mother prayed the rosary. So, and I was seeing a nun who was going to find parents for my baby, and I wanted to impress her. I never told her anything was true. Never. When I went to counseling, she was a social worker. Never told her all the things that was happening. Just what I thought she wanted to hear. I was a chameleon. But my mother told me that if I did a novena, which is 54 days of praying the rosary, that whatever you pray for comes true. And so I did 2 of those back to back, mostly on my knees until I got really heavy, because my baby was big. And I said, Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee, blessed art. It was a mantra over and over and over and over again. And I prayed for her to get a good family, but interesting, I never was praying for her to get a family like mine.
Yeah.
I must have known there wasn't something right, you know. So fast forward, I go to Michigan, maybe 2014, and she's going through a divorce, and she wants me to go pray the rosary with her. I'm like, you what? Because I'm not a practicing Catholic. I still do some of the, I've said the rosary recently, but, and I'm like, wow. And then next to her bed, she had a little Virgin Mary statue that I had given the nun to give to her. And I said, oh, you've got that there. And she goes, it's always been next to my bed. All her life. And what she does when she was worried, she turned to it and she would pray to the Virgin Mary. And so there's
lots of overlap with all of that.
But even so in utero, we hear the thoughts, the feelings, and the words of the mother early as, 16 weeks, very early. And so I didn't know that I was giving her something that would bring her comfort later in life by repeating that. And I have a girlfriend who is adopted. She was, I put it in my book, she and I are actually doing a grief retreat together, and she's a famous musician, and she had this ever since she was little, night terrors. Like she'd wake up screaming and crying and terrified this whooshing sound would stop. And then when she got in school age, it was counting 10, 9, 8, and she knew that when it stopped, something horrible was going to happen. And she finally met her birth mother and asked her, and she said, she got really emotional, and she said, when I went in to give birth to you, they put me under anesthesia, and they told me to count down from 10, and I knew that when I awoke, you would be gone forever. And so those thoughts, those feelings and everything, and I was in horrible grief, knowing I was going to have to relinquish her, and then the rat issue.
Yes. That was so
the rat chapter.
You got away with that for a while.
I had pet rats, y'all.
She had pet rats to comfort her while she was in isolation.
They were my babies.
Being pregnant.
They were my babies, and I think I was transferring, and then something awful happened, and so I had a lot of depression, and I think those things transferred to her. So it's so important. Like when I was pregnant with Becca, I listened to acid rock. Explains a lot about Becca.
That's fun. Yes.
The head pins specifically. Anybody knows about the head pins? Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah.
Really.
No, it does get passed on, right? It absolutely has an effect on who we become and how we are shaped, for sure.
Absolutely. So when you're pregnant, listeners, try to be open-hearted, happy, listen to happy music, have happy thoughts.
Be aware of the vibration that you're.
It's not always possible, but
no, it's not always
and
possible.
And maybe that's the destiny, right?
Yeah,
we don't.
It really could be. It really could be. Gosh, there's so many doors we could go down. I think that just that vibration as well. I am aware now that you also appreciate David Hawkins and just the vibration and energy and frequency of what we radiate, and who we become is what we radiate, right? And how important it is to to do our work so we can be the highest we can for other people. And I think I know for me, I have 3 boys. They're now 17, 19, and 20. And I know the minute I got pregnant, it was like, oh my gosh, I got to do my work as fast as I can, because you're just aware of that. You can put it off on your own. And then the minute there's other little people coming in, it's like, and I think that's true. And that's true definitely with Becca, for sure. And
Becca had it rough because I got sober, met her dad 2 weeks later, and then I was pregnant within 2 months.
Yeah, that was a fast relationship.
And it was fraught with difficulty.
Wasn't great. Right.
And it's, ended when she was young. So there was a part where, he wasn't in her life, and I was a single mom and being adopted. I had no, extended family at all, especially living in Alaska. And the way my parents are, they didn't have family anyway. They weren't real, connected to family. But my biological family, I'm indigenous, so we're Cree. And I found that there's thousands of family in Alaska. I mean, in Canada, excuse me.
There's a whole crew up there,
And, there's a pilgrimage where 30,000 indigenous people come, and it's right next to my dad's property and my birth father's property. And I mean, I have family everywhere. And I think there was intuition that I really wanted that for my kids.
Yeah.
I really wanted my son and daughter, because I have a son that's 30 and a daughter that's going to be 40 day after tomorrow. I really I wanted them to have what I didn't. And that was an intuition. So their fathers had huge families. Like Becca's father has 8 kids and Quinn's father had 6. And yet Becca's father and I divorced. She didn't see the family. And I just couldn't accept that as a young woman, that she wasn't going to get the family
you wanted that for her.
I wanted for her. And a mentor said to me once, when I was, I was going over and over and over it, and it was like my mantra, Becca this and Becca that, complaining and not in a solution at all. And she said, how do you know that it's not Rebecca's destiny to miss her father?
Yep.
And there was a shift there in me that, how do I know all this isn't destiny?
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've seen that come full circle for her. And
well, she probably felt you let go too, right? That frees her up too.
Yeah. And she's turned out pretty good.
She's amazing. She's amazing. So I know there's so many other things we could talk about. Lastly, I would love to just kind of emphasize the importance of community. I really love how you reference that as being so important. And I think that finding the families and the extended families seemed very useful and helpful, and feeling a part of something.
Right.
Additionally, your recovery community, the indigenous community, and the adoptee community, I'm a little curious about, because what does that entail? What is the adoptee community?
So it's something called the adoption constellation. So it's not so much the community, because it's now defined by so many layers. So we have NPEs, people that have found out all of a sudden that through DNA that their father's not their father, or that they were adopted, things that they, now they're in their 50s, 60s, 70s and finding these things out. And then there's birth mothers, women that were in shame and made to relinquish, that were put in homes. Their babies were taken from them. They were stolen. A lot of black market babies, international adoptees that were adopted, as an example, out of Korea. They came here. There's evidence that some of those were stolen babies. Wow. And there's so much history, there's so much written about it now that the world doesn't understand. And then they weren't naturalized. I was naturalized to become a citizen. And some of those people are being deported. They have families, they have careers, they speak English, they do not speak Korean, they do not speak these other languages. There's people that are coming out of the fog, which is a term used for people that have always or believe the narrative of, adoption's wonderful. I'm blessed. I should be grateful. All this stuff, realizing that our lives began with trauma, and that I was told by my mom and dad that
it was the right thing to do.
That my mother loved me enough to give me a mommy and a daddy, and that and I now know the truth of what happened more, and that wasn't what happened.
Well, culturally, we make mistakes, right? Yeah. Culturally, we think that's the right answer at the time, and then we learn.
And we're still thinking that, right? And so there's the adoptees, there's the birth mothers, there's also adoptive parents that are in this, because the adoptive parents, they have fertility, grief. They have, some people adopt children and they don't want to tell them their truth, or,
all kinds of layers. Yeah.
There's so many layers. And so there's people that are trying to heal and come through this. Yeah. So I speak at, there's Concern United Birth Parents, which is a group of birth parents that get together, and adoptees show up, and so do adoptive parents. Then there's, different adoptee groups. There's tons of people that are online. There's podcasts. There's, I'm going back to Ohio to speak at the Ohio Adoption Network.
Okay.
I was in Kansas City not long ago for the Concerned United Birth Parents. I was on an adoptee panel, adoption panel, or author panel, I should say. So, but there's so much now, and you've got to find the right place. And there's also very angry people that have these things. So we want to make sure that we get with the people that are supporting us. And wherever we are in the journey. And then there's so much. There's, like you talked about, you said open your heart, and then you just did the open heart, which we do in yoga. You know?
We do. Yeah, no, thank you for explaining that, because I think there are some people are less aware. I wasn't aware of all those resources, and I absolutely know, especially with just recent technology, how that makes so much sense that those are needed. So
yes,
thank you, Monica. I know we could talk forever. It was so fun to have you. I can't wait to do more with you in life.
I'm happy to get together for coffee anytime, or do another podcast or whatever. And I've got another book coming. Hopefully I can finish it. It was the entire manuscript got extracted to make this book. And the second book is more how I took my power back.
Okay. Well, we look forward to that. I can't wait to read it. I read this one in like 2 days, so
it's a binger. I've been told.
For sure. Well, we will list everywhere to get in touch with you. Definitely monicahall.com, Monica Hall on Instagram, and we'll stay in touch.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you for joining us on the Heart Wide Open Wellness Podcast. We appreciate your time, energy, and attention. Whether you're watching or listening, please remember to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, and YouTube. Stay up to date with us at heartwideopenwellness.com so you don't miss any upcoming events, offerings, or retreats. Until next time, keep your heart wide open.